My name is Teresita Blanco, the Artsy sister, and today we're reading Saturnastra Monkey King. And this is chapter 15, right? Yeah, good idea. And soon all of the soldiers in the vicinity were possessed by such a mean-spirited sadism. And Virgil overheard that one of their own had been captured, and he came to Abel to orchestrate an elaborate rescue plan. And pointing at the detainee, Abel said, "That's not one of our own." "And what do you mean he's not one of our own?" asked Virgil, not understanding what Abel said. "Just look at it. Does it look like the sort of behavior of an agate?" said Abel, pointing at the little squirrel monkey. Indeed, it had the proper height and posture of a true squirrel monkey, and wherever had it gotten the clothing and the twig he branded like a one was a subject of much debate. So upon closer inspection, Virgil confirmed that the clothing were too big for this monkey. And shaking his head sadly, Virgil asked, "Did we always behave so foolishly?" "Not really. I don't know why that thing is twitching and making all of those strange sounds," said Abel, genuinely curious. "Should we help it?" asked Virgil. "Meh," said Abel, sitting back against a tree. And Kakata proceeded to take leads from the surroundings to make a makeshift umbrella. No, there's an agate who are like evolved monkeys, but then they just captured a regular monkey that has stolen clothing. Whatever. A half hour later, there came a downpour, and the burning of the captive was put on hold due to the lack of available dry firewood. And night fell, and with it came a strong wind from the nearby ocean, and the leaves cracked as the storm shot all of the treetops, and like a genuine caged animal, the squirrel monkey was pacing back and forth and rattling the bars, and the sound it was making was a mixture of snapping jaws combined with low moans and hissings. And at midnight sufficient lumber was dry, and the squirrel monkey was suspended in a basket filled with lumber, and then was shot with fire arrows, and the fire burned quickly, but the basket was surprisingly quiet, and the flames quickly died with the wind. And while looking through the pieces of lumber that had fallen to the ground, Carabina noted a small copper cylinder, the size of an index finger, and picking it up, Carabina took the thin cylinder to a nearby brook to clean it. And as soon as the cylinder touched the water, Carabina was forced to drop it. Now that is something," said Virgil, coming to understand why Abel had allowed the strange being to be burned. And night fell, and with it the forest came alive with the sound of bats, and it was the time of the year a cumulus nimbus cloud of bats entered the forest, and they came to this part of the forest to pollinate the royal express trees, the chestnut tree, and the soda tree, and the cetroban plants. And as a noisy nuisance, the bats were an unwelcome visitor, and it kept the guards on edge. And there was one that did manage to get some shut-eye, and like his peers, he failed to get more than 2 hours of sleep for the last month, and he was awakened by a strange androgynous figure walking through the forest, and to him the person seemed like a 14-year-old maiden. And this person had copper-colored hair, and the eyes were black, and the nose was small, and the figure was wearing charred clothing, and the nails had a stronger red coloration as if somebody had dropped something heavy on his hand. And the strange person walked slowly towards the sky with great difficulty. And he saluted what he thought was a woman, and he asked, "Do you live here with the monkeys?" And the strange creature opened his mouth to say something, but it twisted and frowned while making gagging noises. And the strange behavior frightened the scout, who proceeded to walk backwards ever so slowly. And remembering his training, he reached for his bow and arrows to shoot at the creature. And the arrow was pitifully intercepted by a bat by random chance. So like he went to shoot an arrow, but since this area is infested with bats, they're like, ah! When the bat fell to the ground, the scout could not help but laugh nervously, and in mimicry of his laugh, the creature too started laughing. However, its unnatural laughter sounded more like barking, and scared, the scout ran towards the camp, and after informing his superiors of his discoveries, he was forced to return to the spot where he had seen the stranger. And from profile, he was able to make out its elongated tail, hand, feet, and furry ears, and it could almost pass for a true naga human crossbreed. And when the humans saw the creature, they were a bit unnerved by its gawking and bizarre laughter, and it seemed to Abel that it did not know how to properly make use of its vocal cords yet. And Virgil doubted if he had any to begin with. And the bats were swarming all around, and the same could be said of Abel and his companions, and they were in one of the flowering trees, as though they had to keep swatting away the bats as if they were flies. And looking at the band, one of the knights commented, "She does not seem to belong to them." "It's obviously a trap," said the scout. She might be a demon or worse, suggested another. And unsheathing his sword, the knight started walking forward to cut the stranger to pieces. And the creature in mimic reached into his side, and from his skin blew forth a flower hilt with a sharp wood-like blade. And dragging it on the floor, it clumsily struck the iron blade, which shattered into many pieces under the dumbfounded eye of the knight. And trying again the arrow, the scout shot, but he missed because it struck another bat. And the ground around him seemed to bloom like flowers, with butterflies crowding around him, and he ran off laughing into the distance, chasing after a pretty dancer he thought he only saw, and his companions ran after him and followed him till he jumped off a waterfall. And it was the middle of the last week in the forest, and the awakening was scheduled to occur over the course of 6 days. And even now the humans were starting to experience mild headaches and occasional hallucinations, and the antidote to the poison was not working fast enough. It's just that Lusitania has very high toxicity levels, and only the locals can put up with it. Since the humans are not used to the weird poisonous environment, then they're starting to see things. Time, bro?
17 minutes.
The human metabolism was too slow to remove the toxicity buildup, and the last human visitor to see the strange being was Carabinas, and he saw her at night in a field of blue lilies which released bubbles from time to time. And the night seemed brighter to him than usual, and he could no longer understand the words of Hessin which kept telling him to leave the forest, and the evidence alone had shown the goddess the true face of the forest, and the copper color seemed to him a bright red, with floating like ambers, and the sharp dress of the maiden glistened like rubies, and the strange creature grew a flower from his hand, and it offered it to Carabina. And not seeking strength, he came forth, and he smelled the flower, and gaping and grasping for air, he convulsed in the forest floor, while his eyes gave one last look towards the golden Titan moon. And later that night, the Nagas had gingerly had Carabina up in a tree for all of his troops to see, and knowing the dramatics of medieval society, Abel placed a warning sign. You have 6 days to leave the forest before it is too late. And those who were foolish enough stayed, while those who broke away from the main ranks were safely guided out of the forest. And they felt like fools after exiting the forest so quickly, and with all their wandering they had covered very little ground in the way of piercing through the Lusitania Peninsula. And all those who chosen to stay, they perished when the 6th day came. And the forest was finally awakened when it sensed the presence of the unwelcome element, and a great mist emerged from 2 caves inside the forest depths, and soon it spread, killing the outside humans, and the natives inside the forest, as well as the animals, became sick as well, but unlike humans, they endured. And after 2 days, everything returned to normal. The fall came, and with it a degree of normalcy. So there's an even bigger, aside from the toxicity, there's an even bigger creature dormant on the ground that when it senses something that shouldn't be there, releases more poison, and then the outsiders usually drop dead, while the animals and the creatures that are used to it, they get sick, but they live. Ugh. They live there, but they still get sick for a while. Time, bro?
15 minutos.
The fall came, and with a degree of normalcy, and a couple of troops returned to Canada empty-handed, and they were shocked to discover that all of their efforts were for naught. And when winter came, they had no choice but to swallow their pride and beg for food aid. And as was the habit of the day, food came at a price, and with a small army they had to cede most of their territories to the southern kingdom. And Veragheron also recovered important archers that had been stolen by Carabina. And these archers had key information designed to keep Veragheron in check, and able solidified his partnership with Theobald. And he met with the leader in Soreguri. And Abel gives Theobald the tower as well as the perfect garden sent for as a thank you for his help. And Theobald kindly declined both the garden and the tower, and a bit curious, Abel went to his castle to speak with him in person with regards as to what sort of recompense he demanded. And Abel saw Theobald in one of his fortifications, and located in one of the inclinations of the plateau. The structure seemed to be dangling at the edge of the cliff, and the building was in fact more solid than it appeared. And carved from the rock itself, the designer used the natural architecture for decoration, and while the building softened the stone in shape, the interior of this one was solid, only this successively, and at times it showed entire pieces of the columns being born from the stone, and at others personages of fantastic creatures. and no one knew the building was there, and it was discovered by Theobald during an exploration mission at the plateau. So that wasn't like a castle he built, so it wasn't like a fortress he built, he just found the wall, like fudging around there. And he was trying to discover a new route up the mountain, and instead he found a stone structure, and at the moment the mountain was blanketed by a thin layer of snow. And in this form, the stone-cut building seemed to blend against the rising plateau. And after climbing a series of flimsy ladders and rope bridges, Abel found himself inside the strange building. And while walking towards it, the audience saw Abel could not shake the feeling that something was watching him. And instead of seeing Theobald, he was received by a maiden with a crown of pearls sustaining a transparent veil. And on top of the top of her attire had sleeves that covered her shoulders but left her belly exposed, and underneath she wore a long straight skirt. And the most striking feature about this part of her white outfit was the natural decorations of pearls and rubies, and she had ebony skin, curly flaming red hair, and her iris was like black opal. And she begged Abel to sit by the table with her, and as she poured him tea, and she offered him biscuits, and she said to Abel, "This is more of a force of habit on my end, and I do not know why you do, and I do know that you do not mean us any harm." "It's fine, I'm a bit hungry," said Abel, eating biscuits and sipping the tea. And he said, "Jasmine, my favorite, it pleases me to see you comfortable," said the maiden, smiling. "Just out of a little curiosity, may I be allowed to know your names?" said Abel. "Why bother, I suspect this will be our one and only dealing," said the maiden, picking up the leftovers. And a servant then came from another room and took the things from the maiden. And bowing, the maiden, dressed in a pearly dress, disintegrated into a shower of flowers. Hibiscus Cyaranus Helene flowers, a 5-petal flower with a red center, aka Rose of Sharon. Abel heard this basic information after picking up the flower, and he was about to listen to the rest when Theobald entered the room. And Theobald saluted Abel by bowing, and after doing so, he came to Abel with an outstretched hand for a handshake. And remembering his last meeting with Theobald, Abel shook his hand with the tip of his staff, and Theobald could not help but curl his lip in disappointment. He really wanted to pet the little monkey king. He's like, "Give me your hand, give me your paw. I wanna touch your furry paw." Sighing, Theobald said, sitting down on the couch. "How may I help you?" "You're the one who called," said Abel, shaking his hand. "Did I? Ah, yes, about my reward. I do not want any," said Theobald flatly. "No, will I accept anything you offer me, or my man. If you personally do not want anything, I will then extend my offer to those who are truly responsible for the raising of the grandeur caravans. Though frankly I am willing to let them reach their final destination," explained Abel. "If you let one thief get away with it, you will never know peace, and even the fear of death will not stop them," said Theobald, gesturing to Abel to sit before him. Yes, whatever. And tell me, how can I repay the favor?" "I do not have the patience for roundaboutness," said Abel, annoyed. "Why is it so important for you to repay a favor? Even if one day we become enemies, I won't use this incident to force your hand," said Theobald condescendingly. "It is an ugly thing. In the same way we insist on getting paid what we own, we repay whatever action or boon is thrown in our direction. And to deviate from this hobby would upset the natural order of our society. And for us to behave in a true symbiotic behavior, you must be willing to accept a reward for your unwelcome service," said Abel, with glassy eyes. And for reasons Abel did not understand, Theobald seemed to recognize the strange look in his eye, and nodding, Theobald then said, "There is one way you can repay me." "Name it," said Abel. "There is knowledge which I understand is only shared among your people, and I wish to be privy to this forbidden knowledge, or at least a portion of it," said Theobald. "So be it," said Abel, folding his arms and crossing his legs, and he added, "I would answer in accordance to the size of the favor you gave. First, I want to know through what means you repel the enemy force. What is the secret of the Naga forest?" asked Theobald. And he knew that information was just as valuable as any other type of boon. "We did not repel the invaders. Rather, we gathered them like sheep towards a section of the forest with the highest level of toxicity. In doing so, we were able to slay them without engaging in direct combat," explained Abel. "So the water and the food, they are poison," said Theobald, nodding. "Got it. Not necessarily. You can avoid eating the plants and the animals and even the water, and still you drop dead in the forest, and there's a certain miasma about it. and the animals and other living beings, they are already used to it, explained Abel. And it is the reason why no outsiders can ever take over Lusitania. They are simply not built to withstand the miasma in this region. But where does this miasma come from? Insisted Theobald. From underground, said Abel. Why does it come from underground? Asked Theobald. Abel shrugged his shoulders, feigning ignorance, and he then said, sitting up straight, "Is there anything else you would like to know?" I never did understand the circumstances surrounding Bertham's death. What did really happen? Asked Theobald. I was not there. Another information I got from my brother, so, said Abel, pouting. So, asked Theobald, he's not a credible witness? Nah, said Abel, shrugging his shoulder, and he added, only Marduke knows why Bertha had agreed to duel him in the first place. What is blood red? Asked Theobald. My sister Walden describes him as a physical manifestation of a curse. The people in this continent were too violent, and given the chance they will wage war 30-15, and Blood Red was born in order to put an end to the chaos lest we wipe ourselves out for good. And every time violence gets out of hand, a new Blood Red comes into this world, said Abel, getting up, and Theobald took this as a sign that he already knew too much. Time,
7 minutes.
And before leaving, Theobald patted Abel in the head and in his ear, and for taking such liberty, Abel sunk his fangs into Theobald, and rubbing his hand, Theobald moped, "You are worse than my cat. I am a smart sentient being, and I refuse to be petted as a common lapdog. Pet me again and I will kill you," warned Abel, brandishing his staff. Laughing, Theobald ruffled Abel's hair, and he said, "Sure you will." Growled Abel, leaving in a fury. The maiden who had visited Abel manifested beside Theobald, and together they saw Abel leaving the ruins and then disappearing in the forest ground below, and she commented, "He is certainly a peculiar fellow. From up close, it is almost impossible to take him seriously. He just looks like a monkey from back home," said Theobald. "And no wonder why the Naggas are so different from the rest of their kin," asked the maiden pensively. "There is only so much knowledge you can accrue from here, said Theobald. "His mind is like a closed casket. It's like a closed casket voting. In the end, Voden had failed to siphon any important information from within Abel's memory, and as for Theobald, he was happy to have the chance of seeing and petting the Monkey King. And the small king reminded him of home, and just seeing Abel made him smile. And Voden couldn't help but compare Marduke and a Monkey King, and while Veragero was growing increasingly recluse and isolated, Lusitania seemed to be extending its fields of influence, and these conflicting influences in the continent were contributing to its instability. And winter progressed uneventfully, and as decreed by the overlord that was blood red. And after almost 2 decades, the people had finally learned to respect his powers, and winter was known as the trading season. The harvest had just been gathered, and in most regions it rained instead of snow, and even in the areas where it snowed, it did not fall in sufficient quantities to restrict movement. And only the Sea Dragon archipelagos experienced visits coming from the lands of Albion, and Abel would have liked to spend those last months in year hibernating, and after returning from his visit, he started sleeping most of the day and only waking up to eat a small bite. And on the third day, he awoke after being thrown into a cold bath. And checking from head to toe, he allowed Garganta and Ada to bathe him, and after getting him dressed, they to drag him to his library. Into their tenacity, Abel returned to studying magic. A habit he had lost these past few years, and while studying he heard Hyperion make weird noise, and they were followed by the strange red mist of Rusalka. And getting out, he brought his illustrated spell book, and while pointing at the pictures, he explained how his magic worked. And after concluding his lesson, he looked out the window and he smiled. The strange tree had been replanted. Time?
4 minutes, 4 seconds.
A week before the New Year arrived, Abel received interesting news from Pierre. The reclusive tower of Subero was opening its gate for its New Year magical symposium, and Abel had never heard of it because the Nagas were not considered to be leading authorities on anything. And Abel had nothing planned for New Year, so he decided to crash the party. And entering a party uninvited was one of his favorite pastimes when he was younger. And he summoned to him all of the Anos and Deacon mages that were not doing anything useful at the moment. And Pierre also came along, seeing as though he was the most interested in attending a mage party. And before heading out, Abel said to his companions, You guys do know that we are pariahs in the magical community, right? Man, that was more than a decade ago, and how long can humans could possibly hold a grudge, said Peter, smiling. We shall see, said Abel, raising an eyebrow. Go, said Garganta, bowling along, and she carried with her the young pure Hyperion. And Abel took Hyperion under his arm, and then he said, Thanks, I will see you when I get back. Go, said Garganta, come, said Garganta, standing beside him. And Abel gathered that she wanted to see the event as well, and it was Whenever he was going to a happening spot, he always sent messengers to his siblings, and since Marduke happened to be going through, apparently thought this was a bad idea, he sent Inanna to provide backup, and the presence of the prince or princess of Veraghetto gave some legitimacy to their proceeding. And of the few sent their own particular magic users to the event, and they were there to convince Inanna to act for their benefit, and they were still stuck in the past, and other interesting personages to make an appearance was the herder-turned mage named Erwin, as well as the farmer Windy and his cat Magris. And the deal were quite disliked among traditional magic users, in part because they came from humble origins. And aside from magic, the trio didn't have any other marketable goods, and it was always a wonderful outsider how Erwin managed to keep the oil lamps lit on a shoestring budget, and the Tower of Elysium was almost a non-for-profit organization. Time, bro?
2 minutes, 30 seconds.
And they were there to provide backup for Abel should anything get out of hand, and the current master of the Tower of Suberos had a healthy respect for Erwin's power. And once the years the stories of Erwin's exploits have been adorned and exaggerated, and many times have been burned to the ground as of late by young mages in order to get favor of Erwin, and entry to his school was arbitrary at best, and no discernible pattern had been observed. Him coming there was a chance for novices and masters alike to get some much needed insight into the workings of his tower in Elysium. And as for Abel, no one in the tower was particularly happy to hear of his coming, and a day before they started the events, effort had been made to prevent his entry. And thanks to Inanna's interference, Abel and his party was allowed inside, but he was definitely made to feel unwelcome. The only rules given to her were in the stables with the rest of the animals, and Abel neither minded nor cared since Erwin and Farmer Windy had offered to share their lodgings, and the symposium had grown from a small co-op lectures into a 3-day gathering, and it was a chance to share information with the hopes of enriching one's magical knowledge. And the mages of today had learned much from the war, and limiting the access to knowledge was more of a liability than an advantage in the long run, and making magic more public and accessible. Suberos and his peers hoped to shape public opinion about magic users. And as far as Magris was concerned, this symposium was actually making things worse, and normal people were more afraid than ever of magic users, and without the Dragon Riders or support from Veraghetto, magic users were the next best thing for feudal lovers. And the length of the gathering varied from year to year depending on the availability of supply. And this year, effort had been made to extend it for longer, seeing as though the eccentric Inanna was to be attending. Time?
30 seconds.
Alright, bye-bye, God bless.